Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Dave Fano. Dave is a serial entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience building products and services to help people leverage technology and achieve more with less. Trained as an architect, but with a passion for building and not buildings, he realized that his career path was in making technology products and not architecture. He is focusing that passion on empowering people with tools and resources to grow their careers as the founder and CEO of Teal. In under 1 year, the team at Teal has grown the platform and community to over 20,000 users committed to growing their careers. After working as an architect and while being adjunct faculty at Columbia's Graduate School of Architecture, Dave co-founded the technology consulting firm Case in 2008. He grew Case to a team of 63 and worked with clients such as Google, Disney, and Apple. Case went on to be the first acquisition made by WeWork in 2015. At WeWork, Dave held the titles of Chief Product Officer, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Development Officer, and eventually Chief Growth Officer. Those are a lot of chiefs. Dave led the teams responsible for real estate leasing, design, construction, sales, and marketing. While there, he partnered to launch product lines such as WeWork Enterprise, WeWork HQ, and WeWork Membership. In a span of 4 years, they built a global growth team that opened and sold over 2 million square feet of space per month. The experience of leading and growing a team at such a pace drew Dave to his excitement for careers in the HR space. His mission now is to empower every professional with the career guidance and resources they need to make career decisions with confidence. That happens by providing the level of tooling and infrastructure that companies have, but powered by a professional career platform. Please join me in welcoming Dave Fano. Hey, Dave.
Thanks so much for having me, Tammy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I am tickled to have you here, literally. And so Dave, as you know, Work from the Inside Out, it's all about all the different moves we've made in our careers and then some. So, you know, we all started somewhere. Take us back maybe to some of your earlier years, formative years. Where did it all begin for you, or how did those inform where you are now?
So I guess if we sort of distinguish work and hobbies as like things that make you money.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll run with that. And I'd say one of the first times I made money on my own that wasn't like an allowance or doing something around the house was buying and selling comic books.
Aha.
And it aligned because it was connected to my passion. My brother was a comic book collector. My cousin was a comic book collector. I love just like looking through them, and I love the art. But then there was this understanding that I sort of built up over time that I could trade them. They would appreciate and value. I got a price guide for my comic books. Wow. And that became very exciting for me, that there was this, ability for it to almost like grow itself. Because I could buy one and then sell it, then I could buy more. And so this hobby could actually power the growth of the hobby. So that I'd say was probably my most formative, like commercial experiences.
It sounds very entrepreneurial too. So you started with your brother kind of was an influence in that way. I see siblings where they're doing it, so I'll do it. And then your mind sort of turned on to this sort of entrepreneurial bent, it sounds like.
Yeah, he never took it that way. Like he drew and collected, and then he sort of like stopped, and I kept going. And I ended up going and working in a comic book store. And
you did? Okay.
yeah, I would use all my entire paycheck, whatever my $6 an hour I was getting at the time, to buy comic books. But, I knew what was coming. And so then I would like speculate, and I would buy 3-4 copies of the ones that I thought were going to be very valuable. And I could keep one for myself. And then when they went up, I would sell them. I would sell them in the store. They'd let me put them on consignment. And I was doing that at, I think, like age 15. Wow. I started collecting like around 8 or 9. And then finally got the job at the comic book store. And that was, that's probably, like the first thing that I was doing on my own. That sort of, when I was like making money on my own, that just wasn't chores.
I'm curious. So I'm just very curious now. When did you connect the dots between the value, or the what sounds like the value that could accumulate, and then working in the store, and then I guess seeing really upfront, just how valuable some of these things could be?
So I have this one very particular experience where the commercial and sentimental collided. My cousin gave me some comic books. He had some older ones, and he did this very nice thing, and he gave me some. And I looked them up. They had value, and they weren't like characters that I was that excited about. So I went to the store, and they bought them from me at the store. And then when I told him about it, he was really disappointed with me.
Really?
And I felt really bad, right? Because I don't think that was his, I think, was like, hey, I'm giving you these things that mean a lot to me, and I expect you to hold on to them for a long time. I just turned around and sold them so I could buy the ones I wanted. And I think that's where I sort of understood like the complexities around these things and how we sort of commit ourselves emotionally to these things, but they do have value, sentimental and commercial, and both. And so that was probably my most formative experience on seeing that these things could have value. Like, how long do you hold it? At a certain point, the sentimentality of it wasn't going to serve me. So I probably would have sold it anyway. If I asked him today, which were the 3 books he gave me, he probably wouldn't remember.
No.
Would he remember? But I was definitely a little hasty.
He was disappointed in you?
I'd be curious. I wonder. I doubt it. I should ask him next time I see him.
Yeah.
I remember though. I remember.
No, clearly it stayed with you. I mean, I like the way you said commercial and sentimental collided, because I think that's a very, that's an early lesson to take along with you along the way. It sounds like it stayed with you throughout.
Yeah. And and it's definitely something I've always needed to, I think we all need to wrestle with it, but sort of having had that experience, I've thought about them explicitly, right? In our jobs, we make friends, but then we leave the job, and sometimes we fall out of touch with the people because that was our connection point.
Yeah.
And even sometimes when we want to leave a job, it's like, well, I have so many good friends here, but I'm not making enough money and I don't feel valued. Or I need to make more money. Forget like how I feel. Like I feel super valued, but I just need to make more, and they can't afford it.
Right.
So there's a lot of, the tensions that I think we have when it comes to building our careers.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And so often we, sometimes we go to a job. I know one of my early jobs, I enjoyed the relationships there. The work itself was kind of meaningless to me. I was working in a kitchen in a nursing home. Now, the nursing home meant something to me because my mother worked there, and I cared about the work they were doing there. But the work I was doing there was fairly routine and meaningless. But there were other cool kids working there, so it was fun to go to work. But I realized then that you could actually enjoy going to work even if you didn't like the work itself, because you were surrounded by people you liked. And even now I think about how many people who, when they leave a job, they often aren't leaving the job. They're leaving a boss, or they're leaving an organizational culture. It's all about those relationships too. So, and sometimes you find, you make friends at work and you realize, are they work friends or are they friend friends? There's all those sort of, fine lines that sometimes get drawn as well. But it's interesting that you bring that up, and to learn those at such an early age, though, that some of those, the commercial and the sentimental and what that means. That was big learning. Wow.
Yeah. And, and then I got to see those things continually come up throughout my life. I worked for my father. I've said this a few times, and if anyone's ever heard me talk before, it's like work was the language of our family. My dad was an immigrant, and it's just, you just worked. Like the idea of like liking your work wasn't a thing. It just worked. And so in high school, I did a work study program where I only was there half the days. And then I'd go work for him as a construction estimator or as a, like a courier. I had very low level jobs. But I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But I got to see, what it was to like have, family relationship, a work relationship. And then, the other people that, had been working for my dad for 20 years. And I just got a lot of exposure to the kind of complexities that commerciality, I don't know if that's, I just made that word up, but, commerce have, and that it's formed a lot of my beliefs now on how the nature of relationships and who the relationships are with, and the kind of conflations that people make when it comes to their job.
Yeah.
They conflate their relationship with the company, the brand, with the individuals.
Yeah.
And they have a hard time disaggregating those things.
Yeah.
And I maybe to a fault sometimes I'm able to really kind of segment those things.
Yeah.
And I try to encourage people to do it, but it's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do.
It is very difficult to do. And I think, you think about, I think what you're also pointing to here is the whole notion of, and I think some of this is because we're almost, I don't know if this was your experience directly, because it sounds like you were raised in a way where, work was work, right? You go to work, you do a good job, and it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's just something you do, it sounds like. And it sounds like there was a sense of pride in doing good work, but it wasn't necessarily connected to who you were necessarily in the same way as, if I'm getting this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think about, for example, family members who would put pressure on my brother, for example, oh, you're good in science, you should be a doctor. So, around the holidays, what were the gifts they would give him? They'd give him, the model of the invisible man, with all the body parts in it, rather than maybe giving him something fun to play with, he's getting, things that they're grooming him at age, 11 to become a doctor, and then of course I had several doctors in my family. So, that was their identity. It wasn't just that you're a man who works, you are a doctor. It's your identity. It's who you are at your core almost. And I think that's where some of that conflation can come in, right?
Absolutely. Completely agree. I mean, I still talk to my dad about, today about work stuff. And he sort of, he likes to send ideas. And I'm like, but I'm not, that doesn't excite me. He's like, who cares? It makes money. Like not in like a crass way, but it's like, that's just not even a criteria for consideration.
Right.
That like, I like doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, no, but it makes sense. That's a good business. You should just do that. It's like, yeah, but I'm not excited to build that. And for him, it's like doesn't compute. It's like, I don't understand how that's a criteria for how you choose what to spend your time on.
Right. Well, I think that what you're pointing to as well. Now he was an immigrant from where? What culture or what era did he come from?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important question. He came from Cuba in 1961 in exile. Right. He grew up in what I would say in Cuba was like upper middle class.
Okay.
To very much lower class, like once they moved to Miami, because everything was taken from them and they sort of came in a hurry. And, like I said, upper middle class, they had there, like the thing to do was like have a farm and had, a place in the city in Havana and then like a little in the outskirts of Havana. Mm-hmm. And when they came to Miami, like their whole family lived in a little studio apartment. Everyone had to work. He had to work at the age of 11 and 12.
Yeah.
And, obviously there was like discrimination and a lot of complicated things happening at the time.
Absolutely.
So it was, for him, just like you work, you that's what you do. And that's how you provide for your family, you provide for yourself. You can, you pursue the experiences, you don't count on others, not in a bad way, but it's like, just take ownership.
That's right.
And so the idea of like, you work hard and you enjoy the other things that you do with the earnings from that work.
Right.
But you don't conflate that like my work has to be this thing where I have fun.
Right.
Don't be like miserable, but it just wasn't that high on the list in terms of prioritization.
Right. Sort of the source of your fulfillment is different. I think the fulfillment there is knowing that you are bringing in enough resources or cash to take care of your family, to make sure that you're creating a life for yourself and the people you care about. And I think that what you're talking about is making sure that what you're doing for work is also pleasurable or fun for you. And I know that sounds, I know it's more than that. It goes deeper than that. And it doesn't eliminate the idea that, I actually have to make a living too. But it's a different mentality. And I think some of that is also generational, but I think some of it, clearly based on your dad's, background and the circumstances under which he has lived, it makes perfect sense. And it also makes perfect sense for example, people who lived during the Depression era or were raised by people who lived during the Depression era. You didn't worry about whether you liked your work. You worried about putting food on the table and a roof over your head. And so I think that kind of thinking and that mindset was passed down even, to people in my generation for sure. And I'm sort of at the very bottom of the baby boomers. But I've seen this where even people in my generation are passing it on to their kids. And so either even millennials, out there or Gen Xers who are saying, well, as long as it pays, right? And that's some sort of a picture of success. And, I think what you're pointing to, and certainly I subscribe to, is there's got to be more than just a picture of success about the salary, because and I know very well that there are a lot of people out there who are bringing in the dollars or the whatever currency they live by, and their spirit, their personal life, their emotional life is, in the toilet, so to speak. And
hearing you say that is actually spurring a thought I've never thought of before. So bear with me.
Sure.
But, I think a lot of the why people could kind of like anchor to a career, the further back we go, I feel like the less career paths there were, right? There were these like, I'll call them like apex careers, right? You were a doctor, you were an architect. They were kind of like universally respected.
Yes.
And as you were talking, what I was thinking, I was like, oh, wait a second. Those kind of don't exist anymore. Like, I think if my sister who's 25, if she said she was going to be a doctor, I think people would be like, okay, that's cool. But I don't think it would be sort of appreciated in the way that it used to be. Yeah. And like everything's been made accessible. And so I don't think that I'm sure there's, maybe there's like engineers now because but I still don't think it's like people look at certain careers as like, oh, okay, just by saying you want to be that boosts your identity.
Yeah.
And so I think people don't feel that like social pressure to pick a path that is respected. And they actually feel it's actually, I think, gone the opposite. I think what it's done is it's made it harder for people to decide. And it's created a bunch of like angst around people choosing what to do because the options really are anything. And society doesn't push you towards any one profession anymore, maybe except being a TikTok influencer or something.
Well, I think that society doesn't push you towards anything in particular. However, there is a push towards choosing something. And so there's that pressure. And so it's like when you're 18 and you're going off to college, if that's the choice you make, or some people just make that choice because they think that's what they're supposed to do. And they're supposed to know what they want to major in, or even people who graduate and they've, majored in something and they're still supposed to know what they want to do. And so they just pick something, and it's not coming from, that's why I call this work from the inside out, because most people, let's say, I'm guessing, but I think my guess is pretty good. I would say 65, 70% of people, and I'm generalizing, are making a choice out of the air or out of some external influence that has said, you're good at this, so go do this. You're good in math, go be an accountant, or you're good with, spatial relations and figures, go be an architect, or you're good at something else, go be an engineer. And so I know as a coach, I see those people 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and they say, you know what? Everyone said I was good at this, so I went and I did it. And now I've invested all these years of my career in it. And I'm making a certain amount of money, and I have a certain lifestyle, and I can hardly get out of bed in the morning, and I've had physicians come to me, and that's a profession where it's like, what else do you do when all you've done is practice medicine? That those folks are really feeling stuck. And we're not going to get into this conversation, but, given where healthcare is going and how healthcare is putting a lot of pressure on doctors. And I think that points to what you're saying about doctors. Now, I think there are people who are still headed in that direction for different reasons than I think they used to choose to be a doctor. But it's, I think careers and professions have changed, definitely. And yet there still is some of that messaging out there about how, you start in one place and then there's like a path of advancement and it's kind of linear. And so when those expectations don't get met, people think I've fallen off the path. Or I talk to people who say, well, it took me this long to finally find the thing I like. And they're, whatever age they are, 38 or 40 or something. And I'm thinking, and they say it as if they failed because it took them that long to find it. It's like, well, you know what? Most people need time to figure out what they really like. It's a trial and error kind of thing. I was 40 when I found coaching. So, but it's an interesting perception that you don't need to kind of try different things to figure out what you like.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things right now that I'm most uncomfortable with in, I'd say, like the broader discourse, is that you're not allowed to change your mind.
Right.
And so I love Adam Grant's recent book.
I do too. Yeah.
Think Again, because we have terms like flip-flopping. And if a politician changes their mind, they're disingenuous. It's like, maybe, but they could have also just legitimately changed their mind. And I think to your point, like there's these pressures where you like pick a path, whatever it is. And like when you change from it, it's someone like a knock on your character, that you're flippant, that you don't stick to your word, that it's like
unstable or something. Right.
Exactly. You're unstable. You jump around all the time. And look, I think I don't think that's true, but I also think it completely neglects that the world is changing at a faster pace than ever.
Yeah.
And so, even you said you're doing coaching now, but there's nothing that says in 5 years you want to do something different. So there's also not like a destination. I think there's just too much of this, like, you got to set a destination, you got to stay to the track because that shows you're stable, that you're on top of your things. And it's like, no, like the destination is to like stay in motion. Like that's the point. Like there is no destination. It's the process.
Right.
And I don't think that that's really, we're at a place where that is generally accepted. And so I think that there is a pressure, in job search. Okay, you jump every 2 years. It's like 2 years is a long time. It's like a long time.
I think it is for the younger generations, right? I think for people who are more, let's say, established or have been around for a few decades, 2 years feels like nothing. But I hear totally what you're saying. I'm curious, when you went to school and trained as an architect, I'm curious about two things. One is what intrigued you or made you decide to study architecture, but I'm also curious, when you started on that path, did you think that was it, that was going to be your path, that was going to be your profession for the rest of your life? Or did you think, well, here's where I am today, who knows where it will go?
So the answer to both those questions kind of are interwoven. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to go to art school. I sat down with my dad and he said, that's not a real job. You can't make a living doing that. Like, that's a great hobby, but that's a hard life. Who knows if you'll make money? That's not a real job. So I said, okay, well, I guess like architecture is the real job version of an artist. So last minute I applied to college and I got in. And so I just picked architecture as a major and I just started taking architecture classes.
He was okay.
And yeah, it was very close. He was a builder, he's in construction. So it was very similar. Yeah. He had studied architecture for a semester in college and then just went straight to construction. So it's familiar. And yeah, it's something that I could talk to him about. I think my mom had even taken some architecture classes. So design was something that was sort of our family liked. And so it just made sense. I just did it.
Yeah.
But from the get-go, it wasn't what I wanted to do.
Really?
And so I was like, all right, I'll do this as this kind of like real job thing. And then every step of the way, I was looking like, how can I hack this education to be something else? So then as soon as I finished undergrad, which when I started undergrad, I didn't even know that the idea of like grad school existed as a thing.
Oh, really?
We just weren't that kind of family.
Yeah.
That thought about like education.
Yeah.
And like planning. Both of my parents, my mom had not finished her degree. My dad did not have a degree. They were both very successful in their own right, but it's just like education wasn't the thing that did it for them. It was hard work and elbow grease.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't part of our planning.
Yeah.
You went and you did your things. But then once I was there, I sort of started to understand things and sort of better understand the landscape. And there at Columbia, there was a few instructors that were really leading the way on what was called like digital architecture.
Yeah.
And which is all this 3D stuff. And I really like technology. My uncle was a graphic designer. He gave me my first computer. And I was really enjoying that throughout undergrad. I was learning every bit of technology I could. And so I said, okay, here's a chance, I think, for me to kind of trick this whole situation into like going to this very 3D school. I want to go do like film sets in 3D. I love special effects. So I was like, I'll go to Columbia instead of going to a special effects school, because I honestly didn't know that those were around at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was like a very like easy transition. It was hard to get into the school. I never thought I'd get in, but I was like, yeah, I'll take that as a, sort of swing for the fences. And I got in. And so I went, there was a teacher, his name's Joe Kaczynski, who I really looked up to. I was like following all his work. He actually went on to go direct the remake of Tron and a couple of the really cool movies. And he left the profession of architecture and is in Hollywood doing cool things. And so I got there, and when I was there, my passions kind of evolved, but I never went with the intent to want to go make buildings. I was sort of like this sort of like professional interloper.
Well, it sounds like you were trying to honor your father while also honoring yourself at the same time. And you were, kind of towing the line a little bit.
I think you're giving me a lot of credit with honor. I really think like I felt like I was trying to trick him to like pay for my schooling.
All right, I'm giving you credit, but I mean, what I'm curious, what did he say when you were working in a comic book store? Was he okay with that, because you were finding ways to make money, right?
I mean, I think at a young age it was okay, but at a certain point it's like, okay, you need to get a real job. Like that's not a real job. That's like, yeah, it's like, like there's no future in that, right? Like in his mind, there wasn't like a world where I opened a comic book store which is still sort of my ambition.
You still
at some point.
Comic book store?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
It's on my sort of bucket list. But I just, I don't think he thought that there was a thing there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't a comic book collector. So it's not even something that like we had in common.
Right.
For him, it was just this sort of silly thing. And so it's like, oh, go get a real job. Like go get it. Even if it was like whatever my career was going to be.
Yeah.
Like in his mind, it was like, go be a janitor at a company that does that. So at least you can be around it. Like you can be hearing the conversation. So if I would have said I wanted to be a doctor, he said, fine, go sweep the floors in a hospital. Because you could be closer to you could meet doctors, you could be around it. It's like start at the lowest possible position you could, but at least have it be in the path that's going to be in the thing you're going to do in the future. And so he would have preferred I do that than be in a comic book store because he just didn't see like a path. And I want to make sure I'm not.
I can hear that. I can understand that. I really can. I mean, I understand why that didn't appeal to you. But I mean, you think about those people who, started in the mailroom, right? And then by the time you talk to them, right, they're the CEO and they came up with all kinds of cool stuff. Or I was trying to think of that. There's that How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, that Broadway show.
Yeah, that was his point. It's like, look, there's no job that is too low of a job. Like any job is a good job. But be strategic about why you're there and have a plan, like, how these things are going to build on each other. So you can network, you can meet people, you can be learning, you can be finding mentors. So for him, it was like, do anything, like pick up a broom, do whatever you can, but like at least do it with intentionality was, I think, what he was kind of trying to get at, not in that language, but this is kind of what I think he was trying to say.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it sounded like you were being very, with the comic books, I mean, you were being pretty enterprising at a young age. The wheels were turning. You were running the numbers. You were thinking about how these things worked. I mean, maybe you weren't in a big organization, but I'm impressed.
Yeah, it was, and I don't think he understood that part of it.
Yeah, I hear you.
But there was like a speculation component. I don't know if he thought that it could go anywhere. He didn't know that. Like the first appearance of Superman was selling for $500,000. Not that that'll ever happen again, but still.
Yeah, right. So did you go right from undergrad to grad school? Is that what you did?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And then right out of grad school, did you start your own firm, Case, or was that?
No, I went. So I was lucky to have a really great teacher in Chris Sharpless, who was one of the partners at this architecture firm called Shop. That was a very digitally oriented architecture firm. And while I was at Columbia, my interests kind of spanned over to the intersection of the digital and the physical.
Yeah.
So I was doing all these very cool 3D things. And then at the time, coming into the building industry was like 3D printing, digital manufacturing. Yeah. And so I thought that was very cool. So going back to the days with my dad, when I'd work on job sites, to then the computer stuff and the physical stuff come like intersecting. Yeah. And this firm that him and four other partners had built very focused on that very much. And so I was able to land a job there.
Nice.
And explore that for a while. And I was there for 2 years and met two really incredible people, Federico Negro and Steve Sanderson. And then we went on to start our own company.
Wow. And you grew that significantly.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing. We had never done that. I had done a little bit of freelance work kind of throughout all of my schooling, but not like that. And so that was a lot of fun. We just the three of us, like we slowly kind of resigned from the firm we were at, started to land some clients, started to do some work. We're actually building a tech startup at the same time. Which was actually the main impetus for leaving. But the consulting businesses would end up taking off. I was able to leverage some of like the curriculum I had written for my teaching time at Columbia, and we were training people how to use software in the building industry. And then we grew that, and that just sort of like naturally grew. And, to the point where, we were almost 65 people. We had some really great big clients, and our biggest being WeWork, which led to them eventually acquiring us.
I see. Oh, okay. Got it. And so they acquired you and then brought you on board, and you got all these different C-suite titles, which I named in your bio. It sounds like that your time at WeWork too, that you had quite a few different roles there. I don't know if, I mean, I know I've shared this with you before, that my daughter worked at WeWork for 3 years, and it had a very, as it was growing rapidly, it always had this very upbeat startup kind of feel, even though it was getting very large. And so I know that job titles can change, by the minute in an organization like that. So I'm curious about your learning curve over that period of time, and how that changed for you during your time between owning your own company and then going and working and joining forces with WeWork. What that was like for you in terms of expanding your view as a business person.
Yeah, it was really an interesting experience, because I'd say almost every 6 months it was a different company.
Yeah.
Even though it was 4 years, which is a non-trivial amount of time, but it was also like at 3x like time speed, because every 6 months the company was a different company. Yeah. When I got there, we were, after the Case acquisition, I think in aggregate, we were 600 people. And when I left, we were somewhere between 14 and 16,000.
Yep.
So, we were in a couple cities. And when I left, we were in, I think, like 100 cities across the world. Right. Yeah. When I got there, I think we had 10 buildings or 20 buildings. And when I left, we were opening 100 a month.
Yeah.
So it was, so there was a lot of progression. And changes, and seeing like the infrastructure of the company forming, from like different versions of an HR department, different versions of a finance department, different versions of a legal department. And even the departments that I was building up, some from scratch, some were sort of evolutions. And, there was a lot of sort of musical chairs on executives in different departments. So sometimes I would, take a department over for a little while and then, pass it off to someone else, and then I'd take it back. Take's probably not the right word, but it would sort of like transfer, sort of temporary responsibility and ownership.
Yeah.
And so it was a very unique and interesting experience, but I definitely learned a lot.
I bet you learn something new every day.
Yes.
I mean, going from, 65 to, growing. I mean, I remember what it was like even, when my daughter was there for 3 years. It was like, oh, now we have this company called We Live. Oh, okay. And now there's this other company, and yet it all seemed to make sense. There were all these different pieces of business that it all seemed so clever, and it all seemed to make sense. And it was, it seemed like it was just a lot of fun at the time. I'm sure from where you sat, it wasn't always fun. But what were those years like for you? Was it, and what eventually made you decide to go? And so from WeWork, you ended up starting your own thing with Teal. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So just talk to us a little bit about that transition. But I'm sure people are very interested in hearing more about your time at WeWork, but that's up to you how much you want to talk about that. But I'm sure the learning curve was huge in so many ways, just even by volume, but also the nature of the business. I mean, it must have to some degree taken you farther and farther away from sort of more of the hands-on technology, design, those pieces, because when you're working at that level with so many people below you, you must be managing more relationships and negotiations and things like that. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. And, I had built the bulk of my career being very hands-on and technical.
That would be my sense. Yeah.
And, at Case, my two co-founders and I were all equal partners, but I had the title of CEO. And so I started to sort of distance myself a little bit from the day-to-day hands-on of like 3D modeling and teaching and things like that. But I still did it. It was really important to me.
Yeah.
And when I was first at WeWork, I still did some stuff, but eventually, my organization was 3,500 people.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about what and I had consulted at Case. We had some very large clients, but it's very different to be on the inside than to advise from the outside and to really understand all the complexities.
Right.
I had a whole new level of empathy from when my clients would be like, yeah, that's a great idea, guys, but we can't do that. And I'd be like, but why not? Well, now I understand why.
Right.
The internal workings of what each person was optimizing for, from, what they thought was right to what affected their compensation, all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah.
And that part was less fun for me. That doesn't, for some people, they love it. Like that's their favorite part. For me, that was less fun.
Yeah.
Needing to sort of navigate the inner workings of relationships and, what people were being measured by and sort of what different people's motivations were. It just became a lot, and all very well founded and having their reasons. But it just became a lot. Yeah. I wasn't particularly well suited for just trying to be that diplomatic, which I think when a company is like at that scale, that's really kind of how you need to operate. And I'm just a person who needs to operate at pace, wants to be able to make decisions and move quickly. If it's the wrong one, own it and change it. But when companies get that big, it gets a little harder to operate that way. So it just, it outgrew me, and so it wasn't, I think, the best fit for me anymore. In terms of fulfilling work and what I love doing. And honestly, I wasn't the most qualified for what they needed and where they were going as a company. They needed someone that knew how to operate at that level and, operate at a public company. And so it just wasn't, it was a regionalized business. And so, and one of the things that was tricky for me is like, I knew how to be a CEO and like run a department.
Right.
And, run the hiring and run the training. And so once we were a regionalized department and we had like different cost centers. And so my department was going to become more of like a center of excellence is sort of the corporate speak for these. When you start to lead through influence, but at the same time, I was sort of being expected to deliver. And I was like, okay, this is really hard. I kind of need to be able to control the inputs and outputs to be able to, to deliver on these things that are expected of me. And there's people that are really good at doing that. I was not one of them. And so it just wasn't a good fit for me in that model. And I was like, we were looking for other things for me to do. And I just said, you know what, I think it's time for me to go like do something small again, start from scratch. I'm a builder from the beginning. And that's when I just said, and also I had a life situation happening where my wife was pregnant with our second daughter. And I really wanted to be around for that. So I just said, you know what?
The job that was probably consuming you.
Oh, very much. So I just said, you know what, this isn't the best thing for me anymore. And so I decided to step down.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot of self-knowledge to be able to do that. I think some people just think that they have to keep, running on that hamster wheel. Oh, well, I'm here. I'm supposed to be able to handle all of this. And I mean, it sounds like 4 years, you did something right. And to know yourself and to know, I think it also ties in with what we talked about before, that, you have a value for wanting to enjoy your work. And it sounds like it became less suited to you, probably less enjoyable. And it's not a statement on anybody in particular there. It's just that the work itself and the scope and the scale just demanded certain things of you.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, it's like, when's the right time to leave a job? And my answer is always the same. It's when the pain outweighs the pleasure.
There you go.
Right. It's never going to be all pleasure. That's just not, and honestly, that's not even that fun of a job. Like that's not that fulfilling of a job, I should say, because I think fulfillment comes through struggle and things that you look back and you're like, wow, that was really hard. And I'm really proud of the work I did.
Yeah.
I think if work's easy and fun,
Yeah.
it's probably not that fulfilling.
Yeah.
But when the scales tip to like you wake up more days dreading, because you're going to have days you dread. But if those are more than the days you're excited for, then you really got to stop and say, wait a second.
Yeah.
Is this the right thing for me to be doing? Because life's short and I don't have to. There's definitely plenty of work out there for me to do where, at least 51% of the days are the days I wake up excited.
There you go. I hope it's more than that, Dave.
Yes, I think people should aim for a much higher ratio than that, but totally agree.
So how did you then decide, what was next for you? What was that process like for you?
So the project that I worked on last at WeWork that I was really excited about was this series of services that were called Powered by We. Because companies were coming to us and saying, hey, look, your spaces are cool. We like it. We really love the energy, but we've already got a lot of existing real estate and we really want to boost our culture. So can you help us do it in our facilities? And I got really excited about that. Not that I wanted to go be an architect again, but I loved the idea of helping energize their culture. And it actually felt much more like HR work. Yeah. And as I dug in, that's really what it was. It's like, sure, I could rearrange the furniture and I could get you I can make it look really great, but that might not have an impact on your culture. And so that led me down the path of, what does it mean to be fulfilled at work? Personality assessments, like work typologies, what does it really take? And so that got me thinking a lot about HR. And we even talked about like me potentially like getting involved in more in HR in the company because I really, really liked it. And I was very compelled by that as a problem. It just didn't make sense for me to do that at WeWork and, people wanted real estate from us. So that sort of planted the seed of just like how people work together. And I really loved the sort of the team building and sort of coaching and mentoring of the people on my team. And so that got me thinking, okay, how can I help companies do that better? How can I help companies really build amazing cultures? And that was the beginning of the thought.
Yeah.
And I went down exploring that as an idea. And then kind of what I realized was that, and then in conjunction, my experience of leaving WeWork.
Yeah.
Which was emotionally like very tumultuous, not because of anything they did, because of just the things that we go through in our mind.
I see.
Of, quitting and this, and what does that mean? And, managing, like looking for what's next, by being worried that I'm going to get found out and then they might let me go. Again, all in our own head, which I see people go through every single day. I think the company was wonderful with me. They never did anything to cause me to feel that way.
Sure.
But it did sort of get me thinking. I ended up hiring an employment lawyer to read my agreements. Again, they did nothing to make me do that.
Yeah.
It was just this like, oh, I had this agreement. I got to have someone look it over because I don't know what could happen.
No, that makes perfect sense.
And so that whole process, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I'm someone with access who's, made a fair amount of money in my life that can afford to pay for that. But like, what about everybody else?
Yeah.
And so that combination of those two things like really got me thinking that there was this sort of like lack of infrastructure for the consumer when it came to managing their career. But I still thought the company could do it. So for a very brief amount of time, I looked to see like, could I build technology to help small companies do this better? Then very quickly realized just these kind of like commercial misalignments. And I said, the truth is a company can't do that much to get a person more fulfilled at work if the person's not clear with what they want. And so I said, I want to go tackle that problem. I want to go help people manage their careers so that they can be clear on what they want and have the infrastructure and tooling and resources to, pursue the things that excite them confidently without that fear or sense of need to do something that they're not excited about. Yeah.
Love that. Preaching to the choir here, Dave.
Yeah. And, so I started to dig into coaching and I saw, that's a really interesting and great industry, but still not that accessible.
Yeah.
Right. It's not cheap. It's the economics of it. If someone needs to sell hours, which is really what the coaching business is built on,
right,
they got to make a living.
Right.
And and then they got to stay full, keep their book full. So by just like the price of that service is not cheap. And I also think it's kind of the one that there's a point where when it gets too inexpensive, then you're like, it's a like non-linear damage, so you really got to pay for good coaches.
Right.
And so I was like, there's got to be a way that for everyone else who can't afford to get there, but will eventually, that we could just kind of like systematize some of that stuff. So when they're ready and they're ready to tackle the hard stuff, they can get a coach and hopefully they've grown their career. But the day-to-day stuff that's, especially earlier in your career, that can be more like checklist type things, guidance type things, process. But the thing is, people just don't do this often enough to build those muscles.
Right.
But there's a way that we could guide them and help them through tech.
I love it. So what are some of so tell us about where Teal is at today. I know that we're probably going over time a little bit, so honor your time. And tell us a little bit about Teal and where it's at today and where you see it going.
Yeah. So when we were sort of mapping out, how we thought we could have an impact, we sort of looked at the career life cycle, and there's a lot of repeatable moments in the career.
Yeah.
Job searching, first 90 days, seeking promotion, individual contributor to manager, manager to director, director to executive. But we said, look, that's a boil the ocean problem to try to solve all of those. Let's pick one.
Yeah.
And that we know is fairly repeatable, puts people in a sort of similar starting place. And so we said, let's focus on job search.
Yeah.
Because people need to get help with that. There is an massive infrastructural disparity between what companies have and what individuals have. Companies have applicant tracking systems. They've got recruiters. They've got comp databases. They've got all sorts of crazy stuff, good stuff. But the consumer really has nothing, right? Maybe access to a coach and Google. And so I said, I think that this is an area where we could make a ton of impact. People think they know how to do it, but they really don't, because you don't really get taught how to job search. And I come from a sales background. So I was like, job searching is sales. And people will say, yeah, I'm not good at sales, but no one will say I'm not good at job searching. It's like a huge slide on their identity to say like, I don't know how to land a job. It's like, but it's actually really hard.
It is.
And it's getting harder, but it's this funny thing. So I said, I think there's a way we could do this. And so I think naively at the time said, let's tackle job search. I think now I understand the can of worms that we opened up, but that's what's, I'm happy we did too. I'm really happy. And I'm glad I didn't know as much as I know now, because I probably wouldn't have picked it as the place to start, but we've made a ton of progress. And I think we're helping a lot of people with, and we're also in the right place at the right time. Right? I think it was just sort of given the way the world has taken shape. I think a lot of people are thinking about the job search and pursuing a job that they're excited about, and not just this transactional thing, which is exactly the mission we set out to sort of achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wants to learn more about Teal, who are your ideal customers or clients or members, I guess, right? It's members.
Yeah, we call our users members because there's a community component to what we do. It's not just tooling. Right? Tooling is one thing.
Right.
But we're really trying to combat the loneliness of building a career. It's surprisingly lonely. There's a lot of parts about building a career because you don't, some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, right? If I went and told my dad, I said, hey, you know what? I'm actually going to go start that comic book shop. He'd be like, what, are you crazy? And that's a very extreme example, but people want you to stick to the same path. They don't want you to deviate. Most people will encourage you not to take risk, even if they're risk takers.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's, if you want to go pursue something fulfilling, there's kind of the shame of like, why would you do that? You have a great job. You already make good money. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Which makes you question yourself.
Or, gee, that's awfully self-indulgent.
Exactly.
You want to be fulfilled, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, it's fine. But it makes like society shames you for it, I think. So the community component to it is huge, and people really, being able to be there with each other, especially career pivoters, having each other's back, because just having someone, you can't talk to loved ones. You can't talk to your significant other a lot of times. Nope. It's a very, very lonely process. Ambition you get shamed for ambition. You can get shamed for not trying hard enough. So the community is a big part of it. That's what we call people members. And then there's the tooling. And what we want is to create this collective infrastructure for really what I say is individual pursuit, because I think there have been many attempts at creating collectives. But I think that given where we are in the world, like people's needs and people's pursuits are very individual. So when you start to homogenize the workforce, it gets really hard for people to do what they want to do. But I do think that we can create a collective infrastructure. So a very tactical example is like compensation data. Why don't people have access to more transparent compensation data? It only benefits companies.
Right.
And so like those are things that, HR departments have that. And so I want to create this like collective HR department for the professional world. Right. That's really kind of the idea.
So creating both access to that kind of information, but also you provide tools for people to really understand how to navigate things like applicant tracking systems, how to figure out what keywords to use on their resumes, how to navigate LinkedIn better. You
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that I've signed up on it, and I know that there are things that when I go onto LinkedIn, Teal pops up into my LinkedIn and says, hey, there are more jobs you could be looking for. I'm thinking, I think I have enough jobs already, but that's because I'm not a typical job seeker, right? But it's like the integration of Teal with all the other things is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
The goal is to be a career companion. Right, because we just cannot think about all these things, right? Unfortunately, most people manage their career in a very reactive way.
Yes.
Right. They don't update their resume until they have to. They don't sort of give their LinkedIn the TLC until they have to. And it's not that they don't want to. They all want to. Just life gets the best of you. And like all things, it's hard to do these proactive things that have to be completely intrinsically motivated. Until there's some sort of external forcing function. And so what we're trying to do is be there with you and not make you take new action, just integrate with your process and leverage computation and leverage automation so that you can do more with less, which is, I've always been a big believer in technology and the kinds of things that technology can enable. And it's oftentimes very difficult for consumers to do it.
Yeah.
But the potential is huge if we can make it accessible. Well, and so those are the kinds of things that, one you called out is like highlighting keywords in a resume. And it's not, I think a lot of people are getting hung up on like the ATS AI bot stuff. Like none of that stuff's real at the end of the day. It's when you break it down to something super fundamental is a company writes a document that says, this is what we're looking for. If we read it, there are going to be parts where they use language that have more emphasis. I should submit a response to that addresses their requests.
Right.
That takes time, right? That's like writing RFPs.
Right.
That takes a lot of time. So a lot of people just cookie cut their resume, but that's not effective.
Right.
So we can help you algorithmically say, hey, this is the stuff that we think this company really cares about.
Right.
And you should present yourself as someone that knows how to do that instead of talking about all the other cool things you've done that they don't care about.
Or instead of saying, oh, I looked at the keywords and I put them in and I say, well, how did you do that? Well, I read the job description, I found the keywords and then I put them in. I'm like, you found the keywords? How'd you do that? Well, I just looked for the keywords. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, you've really got to use a tool to do this properly. But people really do that. And then, so I've likened the applicant tracking systems to those old ads for the roach motels, the roaches go in, but they don't come out. Your resume will go in, but it won't come out unless you have the right keywords and you're lined up with the algorithm, because that's the way these systems work. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it works, because companies are inundated with applicants because it's so easy to apply online for a job now.
Yeah. And I think that that's a lot of people think like it's some sort of hack or a trick, and it's really not. Like the algorithms aren't that smart. It's really just a search. So a recruiter is told by a hiring manager, look, these are the 3 things that are super important to us.
That's right.
If you don't, it's not even about like the individual words. Like if you don't, I mean, obviously that's important because that's what they're searching, but it's like, if you don't make clear that you are qualified to do those 3, and for every company, it's a different 3 things, right? That's also like titles are all over the place. So if you say product manager, 10 different jobs are going to have 10 different sets of criteria of what matter to them.
That's right.
That's what I think people get frustrated is what I see. I see a lot of, job seekers get frustrated. It's like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. It's like, you're wrong, because as you're in the sales position right now, and your product is you.
Feel put upon, like they're being put through this, right? And it's like, yes, you are. And do you want a job or don't you want a job?
Exactly, because the company needs to hire somebody that's qualified in it. So it is absolutely on you to prove you are qualified for this role.
Right.
And so, but we recognize that takes a ton of work, and we do think that tools can make it faster.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to build.
I think it's great. Now, let me ask you this, Dave. So what does it cost for someone to be a member of Teal?
It is 100% free.
It is?
Yeah. So look, honestly, we tried to charge for it. And one of my learnings is we're very fortunate in that we're backed by venture capitalists, right? I think it's, you couldn't do a company like Teal without it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of dynamics right now around like what the consumer expects for free from companies. We get a lot of really incredible stuff for free. Yeah. And there is not an existing consumer behavior to use tooling for your career at all.
Yeah.
Right. Some people, if you ask any of your clients before they, start working with you, hey, what do you use to manage your career? I'm going to guess 99.999% says nothing.
Microsoft Word to do my resume or something.
Right. Exactly. And so it's unproven. And so we tried to charge a subscription and things like that. But like what we're trying to tackle is not the same as saying, hey, look, we're going to help you lose weight in 90 days. And if you don't, we're going to give you your money back. We can't say we're going to help you land a job, but we're going to give you your money back, because every market's different. Hospitality was in a hard time. Retail was in a hard time. So we tried, and it was really tough. And so we said, look, we got to come up with another way to make money.
Yeah.
Because obviously we want to be a business. We don't want to be a nonprofit here.
Sure.
But charging a subscription for now is not the answer, when we have a lot of these things like comp data and benchmarking and, almost if you think of like credit scoring for your career, those things we think we could charge for, but we got to have the data that everyone can benefit from for doing that.
Exactly.
So we've made it 100% free. Mm-hmm. We're working through the ways to monetize, which, we've noticed that people do spend a lot of money in the process. They pay for great tools, like Grammarly as an example is one I always reference.
Yeah.
Right? You shouldn't have a typo anywhere in your whole job search. So get Grammarly. Yep. There's LinkedIn Learning. There's all sorts of cool courses. We see people spend an inordinate amount of money in courses and skill building, even though they don't necessarily need them. And so given that we're this companion and we know where people are and where they want to go, we think that there's a huge opportunity for us to facilitate those decisions.
Absolutely.
And actually save them money and make money in the process.
Absolutely. I agree. Totally. So Dave, I have 2 questions for you. And I know I've kept you way over time.
That's awesome. I love it. No problem.
Okay. Well, I love it too. So that makes 2 of us. So my first question is, if you were to give someone one key piece of advice for navigating their transitions in their career, like let's say they're in a situation where they're unhappy. Maybe they're deeply unhappy or just mildly unhappy, but they're thinking about what's next and they're not quite sure. What would be a key piece of advice you might give them?
So I think it's really easy for people to articulate what they're running from. Mm-hmm. It's very hard for them to articulate what they're running towards.
Right.
But they got to do that work, because if they don't, they're just going to run in place.
Yeah.
And so that's what I see consistently across the board. The people that are struggling and are in kind of like prolonged periods of discomfort is they're not pausing to do that work to understand where they want to go. And so the more you can do that, it's not easy. I don't say that lightly, you know, read your book, work with someone like you, but like understand what it is you want. Because a lot of people can say, I don't want this, I don't want that. And so what they do is they just do this knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
But then they're still not happy because they didn't take the time to understand what they want. And I'd say like my part B to that is don't make the decision bigger than it is, because you can change what you want. I also see a lot of people struggle. It's like, but it's got to be so definitive. It's like, it's a one-way door. It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
You can change it tomorrow.
This is it for the rest of my life now. Yeah.
Like I tell people that are job seeking, it's like, well, I want to sort of like look for 3 different roles. And I was like, look, your LinkedIn's going to look like a disaster if you do that. Just do one a week. Like, you know, this week I'm going to pursue this one. Next week I'm going to pursue that one, because I see people who are really trying to sort of have it all.
Yeah.
But what they're trying to do is avoid needing to make a decision. So it's like, just make it, iterate. If you don't like it, iterate. So get clear on where you're going. I'd say it's like the main thing I tell people. Everything gets easier after that.
I'm going to add to that wonderful, wonderful advice. And I think I'm going to quote what you just said in all the social media to promote this episode, because I love what you just said. I'm going to add to that and say, most people, where they get stuck is they go from A to Z and they don't fill in the rest of the alphabet, and they don't think about things like, well, maybe I just need some more information to understand what, like they don't iterate. They don't think, well, how am I going to know what else I might want if I don't start talking to people and get more information about what else is out there? And so they know where they're stuck and they know what they don't want. And they're like, well, I don't know what I want. Well, maybe you could just talk to some other people, talk to people who are happy in their jobs, or talk to someone else who does something that you think is really cool. Even if you think you wouldn't want to do it, just talk to them and ask them about what a typical day is like, or why they like what they're doing, or how they got there. Just start getting curious and see what that jogs in your mind. And the more you get that kind of information, the more it will start to stimulate some ideas for you about what you might want to do. It sounds simple, but it's not always easy. So, and speaking of information, we need the information about how people can find you and find Teal.
Yeah. So Teal, it's like the color, TEALHQ.com.
All right.
That's to find us there. It's free. Just sign up. You can find us on Twitter. It's Teal_HQ. You can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. David Fano is my handle on both of them. I'm very responsive on most of them. If you follow me on Twitter, you're going to get stuff that's not all career content, but it's my opportunity to sort of engage in hobby things. That's good. But it's fun.
That's good. Well, Dave, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for this. I am so excited to see where Teal is going. It's already going places, and I know that it's serving so many people in ways that really means a lot. So thank you again for your time here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tammy. I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dave Fano. It was so interesting to speak with him about his professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources or links mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them on the blog page of my website at tammygoulerloeb.com. Just look for episode 142. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Maybe you're just feeling a little stuck. Stay tuned for my new book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles to Design a Career That Fulfills You. It'll be available in November 2021. Print and digital ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent bookstores. If you were inspired by this episode with Dave, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd appreciate your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.workfromtheinsideout.com. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Feel free to drop me a line. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.